The Grove Church will never win this town to Christ by out-shouting the culture. We need to witness through faithful presence, through consistent integrity, through long-term relationships with those in and outside of the church. We need to have grace-filled conversations with those that we do life with every single week, providing evidence that we belong to Jesus Christ. We're going to see that the church exists as salt, first and foremost. That it gives us a faithful presence in the world. Jesus begins with an identity statement, as he often does. Right? We've been talking a lot about this, that identity drives mission, it drives purpose, it drives our good conduct, right? So Jesus again begins with an identity statement. He does not say that you will someday become salt. He doesn't say try to be salty. He declares something that is already true for everyone who belongs to him. You are the salt of the earth. It's a declaration, something that is already true of you. This would have landed with great clarity for the first century audience. See, salt had two primary uses in the ancient world. One, it preserved, and two, it purified. First, I'll explain a little bit more about that salt, the preservation, that salt kept meat from spoiling. Before refrigeration was a thing, salt was pressed into the meat to slow decay. In a world without freezers, salt was essential for survival. It kept what was good from rotting and becoming useless. Second, salt was associated with purity, as I said. It was used in certain offerings in the Old Testament. It symbolized faithfulness and covenantal commitment. So when Jesus calls his followers to be the salt of the earth, he is saying something pretty profound. He's saying that the presence of his people in this world should have a preserving effect. It should slow moral decay by the sheer presence of goodness. Righteousness and integrity should be able to slow down this world from falling further and further into darkness. It should add a flavor of grace and truth in a world that is harsh and cynical and extremely self-focused and idolatrous. It should create an environment in which life is protected and flourishing can happen for each of us, individually and corporately. See, salt is not an overpowering thing the way we think about it today. Salt influences quietly when used appropriately. It does its work by simply making contact with the meat, by just being pushed into it. It does its job. Church family, Jesus is not calling us to retreat from the world or to mirror the world on the other end. He calls us to be present in the world with a distinctiveness that makes everything around us better, more stable, more hopeful, more alive. If we are to be salt, we need to be pushed into the world, on the surface of the world, so that we can continue to preserve it. The salt is distinct from the meat, but it also helps the meat. This is why he warns that if salt loses its taste, it will become useless. See, in the ancient world at this time, when we're talking, the salt was coming from the shores of the Dead Sea. And when they would collect that salt, it would often mix with other minerals and words are not coming to me this morning. It would be thinned out. It would become, less pure. It would become contaminated, less useful. And when that happened, it would be swept up and thrown into the road where it would be trampled under the foot. When the salt no longer had a purpose, it was just thrown away and discarded because it no longer had purpose. See, Jesus here is warning his disciples that a church that forgets its identity, a church that blends into the culture or compromises its integrity, loses its effectiveness to witness in the world. Jesus is not speaking about losing salvation here. It's not what he's talking about. He's speaking about losing influence. He's speaking about the way in which we hold ourselves matters. The world does not need a church to taste like everything else. The world needs a church that embodies the kingdom of God in the ordinary spaces of life. I am thankful that there are many other churches out there. I'm thankful that the Lord uses churches to preach and teach the gospel and raise up disciples. But there are many churches in the world that reflect the modern concert more than they do the kingdom of God. And one of the fears of that, I'm not saying it's purely bad. I want to be very careful. I'm not saying it's purely bad. But one of the things that can happen in a community like that is you start to lose your saltiness because it becomes about the performance and your observance of the performance more than it does your participation in the kingdom of God through worship as a body. The world does not need more churches doing that. I want to paint another picture for you that I see forming right here at the Grove. I picture people in this congregation living out a quiet but powerful faithfulness in their jobs. I picture employees and coworkers saying things like, "That man is honest. That woman really works with integrity. That employee treats everyone with dignity. Man, they're so kind and gracious. That neighbor goes above and beyond even when no one else is watching." I picture teachers, first responders, stay-at-home parents, business owners, students, retirees who radiate the kind of steady character that is rare in this world. Consistent, salty presence. That is salt. That is a faithful presence. Let me speak plainly. Let me break it down a little bit more. Our church, the Grove Church, will never win this town to Christ by out-shouting the culture. That's true here in Union Grove and our little surrounding communities as well, Burlington and Raymond and Racine and like everything directly around us. We will also not win by retreating into ourselves either, being so internally focused that we forget to share our saltiness with the rest of the world, that we forget to share the word and the truth with the rest of the world. We need to witness through faithful presence, through consistent integrity, through long-term relationships with those in and outside of the church. We need to have grace-filled conversations with those that we do life with every single week, through day after day evidence, providing evidence that we belong to Jesus Christ. One of the hardest things that I ever had to figure out and finally push through was, how can I, in an extremely secular job, represent Christ well? I was in sales in the construction industry, which is not that different than my military background as well. Construction industry is a little bit better as far as what people say and do and joke about, but not by much. Man, I so badly wanted to be in the boys' club. And at some point, God finally got a hold of me and shook me and made me realize that I can show God's character in the way I treat others in my business, the way I communicate to them, the way I talk to them, the way I sell them, the way I service them. We can show them a different way. And all of you have that same opportunity. You have that same barrier, I assume, as well. Maybe you're saying something along the lines of like, "Man, there's a couple things that don't cross with my job, politics and religion. I won't bring them up because it's going to lose me money or lose me favor or lose me stature or status. Politics may be good to still keep out. But your gospel identity, you can't remove that from who you are. You can't stop being a Christian just because you want a paycheck. You can't. You shouldn't. I hope you're not. And if you are, you really need to be asking yourselves, and God specifically, ask yourselves internally, but go to the Lord with this and say, "God, how is it that I'm supposed to be more faithful in my career, in my home?" That's the one I'm more personally convicted by lately. I'm a pastor, so I get to just live out my Christian faith 100% flamboyantly, and nobody's going to ever say anything because I'm a pastor. That's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? But man, sometimes it is hard to wake up and be gracious for my kids. Or if I've had a hard day at work, for whatever reason, and I come home and my kids are bouncing off the wall like crazy, and I find 3 more things that are broken in my home that need to be repaired, or whatever it is, like, man, it is really hard to be gracious, loving, kind, caring, and reflect the character of God in that moment. And so we have to be asking ourselves in these moments, like, man, what can I be doing to being salty and gracious and kind? Salt works slowly. It works steadily. Salt makes no noise. It's quiet. But salt always works. It's always preserving the meat. And so does the church when it remembers who it is. And that's what I hope we will continue to do.